Have you ever felt like you're constantly walking a tightrope, balancing kindness, availability, and politeness just to keep the peace? You smile when you're tired. You say yes when your soul is screaming no. You hold back your truth because deep down, you've been taught that being a good person means being easy to be around, pleasant, harmless. But what if I told you, that's not wisdom? That's conditioning. Somewhere along the way, someone convinced you that your worth depended on your ability to please others. That if you just stayed agreeable, stayed quiet, stayed nice, the world would accept you. You'd be safe. You'd be loved. But the Stoics, those ancient philosophers who studied life with brutal honesty, they saw things differently. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they didn't define goodness by how much you could tolerate or how easily you could disappear to make others comfortable. They believed virtue was strength, and strength by its nature carries weight. It's not found in submission or silence. It's found in clarity, boundaries, and self-respect. You see, kindness without clarity isn't virtue. It's vulnerability. It's a subtle surrender. And over time, that kind of surrender adds up. You start to lose touch with who you are, your needs, your values, your voice. So let's get honest. How often do you sacrifice your own peace just to avoid disappointing someone? How often do you smile through situations that chip away at your dignity? That isn't harmony. That's self-erasure. And we've glamorized it. We've called it being the bigger person or keeping the peace. But ask yourself, whose peace are you keeping? This video is not here to turn you cold or hard. On the contrary, it's here to wake you up, to help you see that there is a hidden cost to always being agreeable, a cost to being the nice one. And that cost is you. We're going to look deeper into the trap of people-pleasing, the psychological prison of constantly asking for permission to exist. Because real goodness doesn't come from being passive. It comes from being present, rooted, steady. The Stoics taught us that we don't need to raise our voices to be heard, but we do need to stand firm in our values. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop asking for approval. Because when you live your life in constant search of validation, you become easy to control. You're no longer guided by your own compass. You're shaped by the comfort of those around you. So here's the question. Who would you be if you stopped apologizing for your strength? What would your life look like if you stopped shrinking to fit into the expectations of others? I'm not talking about becoming selfish or arrogant. I'm talking about reclaiming the space you've been taught to give away. I'm talking about the quiet rebellion that begins the moment you decide to live on your own terms, not in rebellion against others, but in loyalty to yourself. This isn't just philosophy, it's survival, because in a world that rewards the loud, the dominant, the pushy, you must learn to carry your values with quiet confidence. And confidence doesn't mean yelling louder. It means standing taller inside. It means no longer abandoning yourself just to be liked. When you start living this way, something shifts. People might say you've changed. Some may even push back. But those who truly respect you, they won't need you to stay small for their comfort. They'll rise with you. No one will hand you that freedom. You have to choose it. You have to fight for it. Not with anger, but with self-possession. So if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or used, stay with me. If you've ever wondered why being good doesn't always get you respect, this message is for you, because your goodness doesn't need to be louder, but it does need to be stronger. And this is where it begins. Let's talk about something that most people won't tell you. Kindness without strength won't earn you respect. We grow up believing that being helpful, generous, and agreeable will automatically make us valued. That if you show up, say yes, work hard, and put others first, people will admire you for it. But that's not always how it works. In fact, in today's world, the opposite often happens. The more available you are, the more you're taken for granted. The more you say yes, the more people expect it. You might spend years being loyal, supportive, and dependable, only to find that the moment your presence stops serving someone else's interests, you're no longer remembered, just replaced, quietly, without apology. And that realization cuts deep. But here's the truth. It's not your kindness that failed. It's the assumption that kindness alone is enough. The Stoics understood this better than most. Marcus Aurelius was an emperor and a philosopher. He ruled millions, yet never confused compassion with compliance. He knew that true virtue must be paired with clarity, with boundaries. Otherwise, it becomes something others can exploit. Seneca put it even more sharply. You must never lose yourself in the service of others. Because when you do, that's not humility, that's self-betrayal. So ask yourself, when you constantly say yes, what are you really saying to the world? You're saying, I have no edge. I won't push back. You can count on me, even when it costs me everything. And what does the world hear when you say that? They don't hear kindness. They hear, this person has no consequence. Where there is no consequence, there is no respect. Think about it. Why are the people who set clear boundaries often treated with more consideration than those who never say no? Why do we admire those who speak with directness, but forget the ones who are endlessly agreeable? Because clarity carries weight, and weight commands presence. The Stoic way isn't about domination. It's not about being feared. It's about being firm in who you are. So firm, in fact, that others can't just move you around to suit their comfort. You're not here to be used. You're not here to be everyone's yes man or peacekeeper. You're here to live with principle, to stand for something. Real strength doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It speaks through action, through self-respect, through knowing your worth even when others overlook it. Let me share a quick story. A woman named Evelyn worked for a company for over 15 years. Always the first to volunteer, the one who stayed late, who covered for others without complaint. She never asked for recognition. She believed that being good meant being quiet and reliable. But when the opportunity for a promotion came, it went to someone louder, someone less qualified but more assertive. No one even thanked her. She realized in that moment, being essential isn't the same as being respected, and being nice isn't the same as being seen. Evelyn's story isn't rare. In fact, it's incredibly common, and that's what the Stoics warned us about. If you don't carry yourself with presence, if your goodness isn't grounded in strength, people will use it, not always out of malice, but because human nature often defaults to taking what is given freely. So if you've ever felt invisible after giving your best, if you've ever wondered why people don't appreciate your loyalty, your effort, your patience, maybe it's not that they don't see your value. Maybe they never had to. The world doesn't reward what's easy to access. It respects what's earned, what's held with intention, what's backed by boundaries. Marcus Aurelius didn't write, "Be kind so others like you." He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But he also knew that if a good person carries no weight, they're often treated like they don't matter. So here's the takeaway. You don't have to stop being kind, but you do have to stop being invisible. Start saying yes with purpose and no with confidence. Start showing up as someone who is compassionate but not convenient, grounded but not passive, kind but never a pushover. That's the cost of being too nice. And that's the shift the Stoics invite us to make. Because when you add strength to your goodness, you don't just get noticed, you get respected. Have you ever wondered why it feels so hard to say no? Why even small acts of self-assertion can leave you feeling guilty, selfish, or even afraid? You weren't born that way. No one enters this world desperate for approval. That need to be liked, to be agreeable, to be seen as good, it's not part of your nature. It's something that was taught, conditioned, shaped over time. From the moment we're old enough to speak, we're given rules. Be nice. Don't say that. You'll hurt someone's feelings. Smile. Don't argue. Be polite. And while some of those lessons have value, over time they begin to add up into something heavier, something dangerous. We start to link love with obedience. We begin to believe that to be accepted, we must conform. Hide the messy parts, soften the truth, be agreeable at all costs. And eventually, we trade authenticity for harmony, truth for comfort, voice for peace. The Stoics had a name for the part of you that makes moral choices: prohairesis, your inner judgment, your reasoned will. When you constantly say yes while your soul is saying no, you're not choosing peace. You're surrendering your selfhood. Let me introduce you to Elias. Elias was the kind of man everyone praised. Kind, calm, always willing to help. At work, he never said no. In his family, he was the quiet supporter. His friends saw him as steady and humble, but deep inside, Elias was exhausted. He had agreed to things he didn't believe in, silenced his own thoughts to avoid conflict, suppressed his disappointment so many times that it no longer even registered. One evening, after being overlooked for a promotion yet again, he didn't feel angry. He felt nothing. And that's when it hit him. He hadn't just silenced his voice, he had silenced himself. This is what happens when kindness is fueled not by strength, but by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of disapproval, fear of no longer being seen as the good one. But here's the truth the Stoics would want us to remember. A peace earned by erasing yourself is no peace at all. True virtue is never about being liked. It's about being aligned with your values, your reason, your sense of self-respect. When you say yes out of guilt, when you agree just to keep the peace, that isn't kindness, it's submission. It's spiritual exhaustion disguised as empathy. Seneca warned that those who always agree with the crowd are preparing their own downfall. Because that constant compromise doesn't lead to connection, it leads to resentment. You begin to feel bitter, unappreciated, but you never say it out loud. Because to say it would shatter the image of the agreeable one, the peacemaker, the good friend, the reliable employee, and so you stay silent. But that silence, it's not noble, it's suffocating. Let me ask you, why does saying no make you feel like a bad person? Why does expressing disappointment feel like betrayal? Why do you equate self-respect with selfishness? The Stoics would tell you this is a sign that you've lost your center. You've confused performance for virtue, and that performance is exhausting because it never ends. Today they like you, tomorrow they don't. And while you're chasing approval, your real self fades into the background. That mask you wear, the polite, pleasing, agreeable version of you, it wasn't built from truth. It was stitched together by fear. But fear is not a teacher. It distorts, it manipulates, and worst of all, makes you forget your own worth. Epictetus didn't ask the world to understand him. Marcus Aurelius didn't beg to be liked. They focused on living in alignment with their own reasoning and let the world respond however it chose. And that's the challenge for us too, to stop performing, to stop asking for permission to take up space, to stop believing that goodness means disappearing. Because real goodness, it doesn't avoid conflict. It simply refuses to abandon itself. So if you've been trained to believe that kindness means silence, it's time to unlearn it. It's time to rebuild, not from fear, but from clarity. And that's what we'll talk about next. Let me ask you something. Do you believe the world truly rewards goodness? Not the kind of goodness you post about, not the filtered, polished version we perform. I mean real virtue, quiet integrity, consistent character, inner strength. The truth is, the world doesn't always recognize it. In fact, more often than not, the world rewards appearances. It listens to what looks confident, not necessarily what is wise. It follows the bold, not always the good. It admires the ones who seem powerful, not the ones who quietly live with principle. That's a painful realization for anyone who's ever tried to do the right thing and been overlooked, disregarded, even used. The Stoics understood this long ago. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor who faced betrayal, chaos, and the weight of an empire, once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But he never promised that being good would protect you. He knew that goodness without strength becomes a liability. And Epictetus, once a slave who rose to become a great philosopher, took it even further. He taught that it's not enough to possess inner virtue. You must also know how to carry it. In a world that judges by surface, posture matters. Not ego, not pretense, but presence. You are a role, he said, and your job is to play it well. But don't expect the audience to always applaud, because here's the truth. If you show up with kindness but no structure, people will mistake it for weakness. If you live with virtue but no boundaries, people will take advantage. Seneca, who navigated the deadly court of Emperor Nero, said it plainly, "He who always acts like a good man among those who are not is preparing his own ruin." He wasn't discouraging goodness. He was demanding discernment. Because Stoic virtue isn't naive. It's not about being liked. It's about being anchored so deeply that even when surrounded by manipulation, temptation, or cruelty, you don't betray who you are, but you also don't play dead. Goodness in the Stoic view isn't a mask you wear. It's a sword, sharp, balanced, controlled. You don't flaunt it. You don't swing it recklessly. But when the moment comes, you know how to use it. And that's what so many people miss. They confuse being soft with being good. They believe that shrinking, nodding, staying silent, that's noble. But if your kindness comes without consequence, without edge, without substance, it becomes a tool for others to shape you as they wish. So here's a challenge. Can you live with compassion and clarity? Can you be kind without being a pushover? Can you be good and still be respected? Let me tell you something. You don't have to be feared, but you do have to be felt. Your presence should carry weight, not from arrogance, but from integrity. When you walk into a room, your values should speak before you do, not because you're loud, but because you're centered. That's the kind of strength the Stoics built their lives around. Not performance, not perfection, but principle. So if you've ever felt like your goodness was ignored, if you've ever wondered why others seem to rise while you stay invisible, maybe it's not because you're doing something wrong. Maybe it's because the world needs you to stand firmer in what's right. Goodness doesn't protect you, but strength does. And when you marry the two, virtue and presence, something powerful happens. You become someone others don't walk over. You become someone who listens deeply, but also draws lines. You become someone who forgives, but never forgets their worth. That's Stoicism in its purest form. Not loud, not cold, but clear. So the next time you feel overlooked for doing the right thing, remember this. You are not here to be noticed. You're here to be unchangeable in what you stand for. The world might not reward your goodness, but when it's paired with strength, it can't ignore it. There's a dangerous confusion that ruins far too many good people. It's the belief that being kind means agreeing with everything, that real virtue is measured by how much mistreatment you can quietly endure. Sound familiar? We're taught to be patient, understanding, forgiving. And those are beautiful values when practiced with intention. But when they're applied without boundaries, they become something else entirely. They become a silent form of slavery. Let me share the story of Maria. Maria was a teacher known for her warmth and generosity. She stayed late. She answered emails at midnight. She volunteered to cover for absent colleagues without hesitation. She was the dependable one, kind, selfless, always saying yes. But over time, something shifted. Her kindness stopped being appreciated and started being expected. When she finally said no to a last-minute request, people weren't understanding. They were disappointed. Not because she had changed, but because she had trained them to see her as endlessly available. Her goodness was mistaken for obedience. Her virtue was for servitude. And that's the trap. When your compassion becomes predictable, it stops being respected. The Stoics warned us of this. Marcus Aurelius lived by his principles, but he never wrote that virtue means allowing others to step on you. Epictetus, who had endured slavery himself, never said that being good meant tolerating abuse. And Seneca, who walked the halls of a treacherous empire, made it clear you must know when to draw the line. Because if you don't, others will draw it for you. The world doesn't always return fairness for fairness. Not everyone plays by the same rules. And when you assume that your goodness will be mirrored, you're setting yourself up for quiet heartbreak. You give, you forgive, you overextend. And when it's not returned, you don't speak up. You just carry the weight silently. That's not peace, that's slow erosion. This is what happens when kindness lacks discernment. You stop choosing your actions freely and start reacting from fear. Fear of upsetting someone, fear of being seen as difficult, fear of no longer being liked. But fear is not stoic. Stoic kindness is not soft-spined, it's solid, it's rooted. It's capable of saying, I want to help you, but I won't betray myself to do it. Because helping those who don't appreciate you isn't generosity. It's spiritual mismanagement. The Stoics teach us that your time, your attention, your effort, these are sacred. And if you hand them out to everyone without discretion, you're not being virtuous. You're being careless with your soul. There's a powerful quote by Seneca. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. And I'd ask you this, if you never draw a line, never allow your values to meet resistance, how will you ever know your strength? Kindness without boundaries is not moral high ground, and it's moral erosion. So here's a turning point. You can continue giving until you disappear, or you can redefine what it means to be good. You can be someone who listens, but also speaks up. Someone who forgives, but also walks away. Someone who offers help, but knows when to say, not this time. That's not cruelty, that's wisdom. Because when you stop demanding fairness from others and start requiring it from yourself, everything changes. Your energy stops bleeding into relationships that don't value you. Your presence gains weight, and your kindness, your real, conscious, empowered kindness, begins to shine. So the next time you feel guilty for saying no, remember Maria. Remember that unguarded goodness invites quiet exploitation, but goodness with discernment, that earns respect. Stoic virtue was never about surrendering yourself. It's about standing in yourself, fully, clearly, unapologetically. Not to be feared, not to dominate, but to be whole. And when you are whole, people can sense it. They listen, they pause, and most importantly, they know this person cannot be moved by guilt or flattery, because their kindness has limits, and those limits protect their soul. When you finally wake up to the truth that your kindness has been mistaken for weakness, your first instinct might not be strength. It might be shutdown. After years of saying yes when you wanted to say no, of stretching yourself thin for the sake of being the good one, you may swing to the opposite extreme. You stop giving, you stop caring. You go cold, distant, detached, and for a moment it feels powerful. But here's the truth the Stoics would want you to see. That reaction, it's not strength, it's survival. It's not transformation. It's a wall. And walls might protect you, but they also keep you from growing. What you're experiencing isn't not empowerment. It's exhaustion wearing armor. The Stoic path doesn't ask you to become unfeeling. It asks you to become whole. True strength, the kind that lasts, comes from returning to yourself. Not from abandoning your nature, but from reclaiming your voice. And reclaiming your voice doesn't mean yelling. It means telling the truth with dignity. So many of us were taught that speaking up makes you difficult, that having boundaries means you're selfish, that saying no is rude. But the Stoics knew better. They taught that dignity is not loud, it's clear. That truth, when spoken without cruelty, is not arrogance. It's self-respect. So how do you walk this middle path between compliance and coldness? You begin here with 5 practices that rebuild your inner strength. 1. Reclaim your voice. Speak clearly. Not to attack, but to affirm. When you say, this is not okay, or I won't continue this way, you're not causing harm. You're honoring your reasoned judgment, what the Stoics called prohairesis. That's not ego, that's alignment. 2. Master the art of refusal. No is not a weapon, it's a declaration of value. It doesn't need to be shouted, explained, or defended. A quiet, firm no, spoken from a place of clarity, holds more power than 100 over-explained apologies. As Marcus Aurelius said, if it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. That applies to your boundaries too. 3. Pay attention to who resists your change. When you stop shrinking, some people will push back. They'll say you've changed, but the truth is they just benefited from your silence. Growth feels like betrayal to those who counted on your self-abandonment. Don't confuse their discomfort with your mistake. 4. Let go of the need to be understood. You will not be able to explain your transformation to everyone, and that's okay. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, be content to live in the smallest part of yourself, for that alone is truly yours. You owe no loyalty to a version of yourself that made everyone else comfortable but cost you your peace. 5. Trade the desire to be accepted for the courage to be authentic. When you live from truth, not people-pleasing, you may lose approval, but you'll gain something far greater: self-respect. And self-respect is the only kind of respect that no one can take away. That's what the Stoics were pointing to all along. They weren't teaching us how to be emotionless. They were teaching us how to stop being ruled by emotion, how to speak without asking for permission, how to love without begging, how to help without being used, how to forgive without forgetting who we are. This isn't about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to someone you forgot, you. So if you've ever felt like your kindness cost you your power, if you've ever wondered how to protect your peace without building walls, this is the path. You don't need more politeness. You need more presence. And that begins now. Let's be real for a moment. Wearing the mask of the good one might feel safe at first. You say the right things, you play it calm, you avoid conflict and smooth things over. And in return, you get what seems like peace, approval, comfort, predictability. But over time, something starts to shift. That peace becomes hollow. You feel yourself disappearing. Not all at once, but slowly. You smile when you don't mean it. You nod when you want to scream. Until one day, you realize you're not being kind. You're being caged. That mask of politeness and agreeability, it's not your personality. It's your prison. And here's the hard truth. No one is coming to break you out, because the world doesn't rescue people who erase themselves. It rewards them for a while, and then it forgets them. As long as you make yourself useful at the cost of your own voice, there will always be someone ready to take. Not because they're cruel, but because you taught them that you have no limits. And if you keep showing them that your kindness is unconditional, they'll keep crossing lines you never drew. So now you're at a crossroads. Option 1, stay in the role, be the sweet one, the dependable one, the good one, give endlessly, stay agreeable, keep the mask on. You'll be needed, but not known, appreciated, until you finally say no, included, but always small enough to fit someone else's story. Option 2, wake up. Take the mask off, not to become hard, but to become real. Let go of the fear that no makes you a bad person. Let go of the belief that you have to earn love by disappearing. Let go of the lie that your silence is what makes you valuable. Because real virtue, it doesn't ask for permission. It walks with quiet clarity. Real compassion has a backbone, and true self-respect never needs to scream. Epictetus didn't beg for acceptance. Marcus Aurelius didn't trade dignity for applause. Seneca didn't survive a brutal empire by being endlessly pleasant. They stood firm, in truth, in presence, in purpose. And so can you, but don't be fooled. Reclaiming yourself has a cost. It might cost you a few relationships that only worked when you stayed small. It might cost you approval from people who preferred the quieter version of you. It might even cost you your own comfort, because growth always does. But what you gain your time, you gain your clarity, you gain your strength, and most of all, you gain your self-respect. And that is the only kind of respect that cannot be taken from you, because it doesn't come from them. It comes from you. That's Stoic freedom. Not the freedom to rebel for attention, but the freedom to live aligned, grounded, and whole, regardless of who claps for you. So let me ask you, how long will you keep apologizing for having limits? How long will you trade your peace for approval? How long will you dim your light, just so others won't feel challenged? There is nothing noble about disappearing. There is nothing kind about betraying yourself. The moment you stop asking for permission to be yourself, that's the moment you become untouchable, not because you're bitter, but because you're finally whole. If this message spoke to something deep in you, don't let it end here. Click subscribe and join a community of people walking the same path, a path of calm strength, quiet clarity, and unshakable self-respect. This isn't the end, it's the turning point, and the next step starts with you.